A thin veil of morning fog drifted across the empty street, the kind that made the world look softer than it really was. The sun had barely begun to rise, casting pale gold streaks across the cracked pavement near the bus stop. And there, beneath the flickering street lamp, stood a woman wrapped in nothing but a thin blouse, her arms tightly folded against the bitter cold. No one noticed her. No one cared. No one, except a young man who stopped in his tracks the moment he saw her shivering. His name was Ryan Halim, and he had no idea that offering his old jacket to this stranger would change his life forever, and reveal a truth that would leave him stunned. Before the story continues, if you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Kindness to help these stories reach more hearts. Ryan had never been the kind of man who believed he made much of a difference in the world. At 28, he worked long, exhausting shifts at a small printing warehouse. His salary stretched thinner every month, and he was juggling overdue rent, utility bills, and the worry of supporting his younger sister, Sana, who was studying on a scholarship that covered tuition but nothing else. Life felt like a treadmill that only sped up the harder he tried to keep pace. Yet somehow, despite everything, kindness had become the only thing he still felt he could afford to give. This morning had been particularly rough. His supervisor had hinted at possible cuts in staff, and Ryan feared he might soon be replaced by newer, younger workers willing to accept even lower pay. His mind churned with anxiety as he walked toward the bus stop, clutching his worn backpack. But then he saw the woman again, the same one he had noticed earlier near the intersection, moving slowly as if burdened by more than the cold. She stood with her head slightly bowed, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Her clothes looked expensive, but wrinkled and soaked with dew, as if she had been outside far too long. Something about her loneliness tugged at him. Without thinking, Ryan shrugged off his jacket, faded but warm, and stepped closer. He gently placed it around her shoulders. She flinched at first, startled, but when she looked up at him, her eyes were glassy with unshed tears. She nodded a quiet thank you but said nothing. That was fine with him, he wasn't expecting words. Sometimes, he believed, silence carried a louder meaning. The bus arrived, and they boarded together, standing because the seats were full. The woman kept her gaze out the window, her fingers gripping the jacket as if it were the only thing keeping her grounded. Ryan didn't pry. He had learned from his own struggles that sometimes people just needed a moment of quiet humanity. When they reached the city center, she stepped off first. Ryan followed, heading toward his warehouse job. He didn't see where she went. He didn't know who she was. And he certainly didn't know that the woman he had helped was the newly appointed CEO of Allurian Technologies, one of the largest firms in the region. Her name was Mariah Alder, known by the press as brilliant, fierce, and untouchable. But that morning, the world saw none of that. Because that morning, Mariah had been walking away from a devastating board meeting where she had learned that her longtime mentor had passed away unexpectedly. He had been the only person who believed in her rise from a troubled past, and his loss had sent her spiraling into grief she didn't know how to carry. The warmth of the jacket, the unexpected compassion from a stranger, and the silent respect in Ryan's eyes had softened something inside her, something she wasn't ready to face yet, but something she desperately needed. Days passed, and Ryan forgot about the encounter, though he missed his jacket more than he wanted to admit. Meanwhile, Mariah couldn't forget him. She had her assistants search for the owner of the jacket discreetly, and when she finally found his workplace, she visited without warning. Employees froze. Executives panicked. Ryan, stacking freshly printed boxes, looked up in confusion as everyone suddenly snapped to attention. Mariah approached him quietly, wearing the same jacket. She thanked him, simply, sincerely. But then she asked him a question that made the entire warehouse fall silent. Would you consider working for me? Ryan almost laughed. He thought it was a joke. But Mariah wasn't smiling. She told him about that morning, about how his simple act of kindness had steadied her at a moment when she felt she was drowning in grief. She admired his humility, his sincerity, and the way he treated another human being without expecting anything in return. She explained she had been searching for team members with genuine empathy, not just credentials, for a new community outreach division she was building. Ryan's throat tightened. Him? Work at a major tech company? He barely had his college certificates. But Mariah saw something he didn't. She offered training, mentorship, and a fair salary, more than he had ever earned. Not as charity, but because she believed he was exactly the kind of person who deserved opportunities but rarely received them. He accepted, though his hands trembled as he did. The transition was overwhelming. Ryan found himself in sleek offices, surrounded by people who spoke in polished corporate terms he had never heard before. But Mariah kept her promise. She guided him, supported him, and reminded him that heart mattered as much as skill. Slowly, he found his footing. He got his sister better supplies for college. He paid off debts. He began sleeping without fear of tomorrow. And through it all, Mariah's leadership changed too. She became more grounded, more open, more human. The morning at the bus stop remained a quiet anchor in both their lives, proof that unlikely moments can redirect entire futures. Months later, as Ryan stood on stage at Allurian's charity launch event, giving a heartfelt speech about empathy and second chances, he saw Mariah watching with pride. He spoke about how one small act of warmth in the cold morning had returned to him in ways he could never have imagined.